Director and star, Ben Stiller. Please welcome to the stage Ethan Hawke. Please welcome to the stage Winona, Ryder. Please welcome to the stage Janine Garofalo. Please welcome to the stage producer Michael Schamberg. And last but not least, executive producer Stacy Scher.
Hello, everyone. How amazing was that? Seriously. Once again, I'm Stacey Wilson Hunt, and I'm so honored to be here. I feel like I'm in a fever dream, that this is something I've been waiting, I guess, literally 25 years for. So thank you for having me. Once again, thank you to Lisa Lowe for that amazing performance. And I also want to acknowledge, of course, our Sammy isn't here. Steve Zahn could not make it, but we miss him and we applaud his contribution to the film. So let's give him a round of applause. So I would like to start with Helen, my hero. You didn't know that, but you've been my hero for a long time. And I'd love for you to take us back to the early 90s. You were a student at USC. And I would love to know what we just watched, what was the nascency of this project? I believe it was called Blue Bayou at one point.
Oh, actually no, that's a screenplay that I wrote that got Michael Schamberg's attention.
Okay.
Michael Schamberg, the great producer of The Big Chill.
Of course.
Okay, Longmire.
Yes.
And he had the idea of making a big chill about the generation today. We didn't have a name at the time. I think we were called Baby Busters or something like that. And so for a long time, this was the untitled Baby Busters project. And I said, well, there was no real internet or anything like that. So basically my thought process was I don't know what the generation is like, but I know what my friends are like. And they were funny and making bongs out of apples and trying to remember the lyrics to Schoolhouse Rock and desperately trying to look like they didn't want anything. And, so there was a little bit of, there's sort of a miasma of irony that I think we all lived in. And I just started writing. And Michael and Stacey were generous enough. I always compare them to like the DiMedici family. It was like they just kept finding really great scripts and projects and letting us talk. And so out of that, out of a lot of little vignettes and over 3 years, I started writing when I was 20, and I finished when I was 23. In fact, when we saw that, and she said...
You really wanted to be something by the age of 23.
It was a joke. Like, I literally thought that was a serious line, and I couldn't figure out why it was getting laughs. Why is that funny? I really did want to... So that's basically the genesis of it. And then we couldn't nail the character of Michael. And then Ben came on, and about 2 years in, and Ben and I guess we got along.
Yeah, we did. We definitely did.
Good. That's good.
I mean, my memory is, first of all, hats off to Helen for writing this amazing. What an amazing cast of actors. Looking at this with this perspective, you guys were so great. And I have so many, emotional feelings right now.
Before we I want to go back to the producers first, and then we'll talk about Ben, how you became attached to direct. But for the producers, for Michael and Stacey, what were your first reactions when you read the script? Did you feel, oh, we have a kernel of a vision here, but we need some massaging, we need some focus? What were your first notes to Helen?
Well, I think it is on. He's producing me. Michael and Helen had done a script, and they were looking for the graduate moment, which really, in the first draft, I think they blew up the BMW. And I think that since I was closer, I'm older than Helen, but closer in her age, and realized that I'm actually closer in her age than I ever thought I was. I thought I was like 20 years older than her, and I think I'm 5 years older than her. Anyway, but it felt like 20 then, and we just kept going deeper and deeper and deeper into.
And sorry to interrupt. When you say the graduate moment, do you mean are you trying to seduce me moment, the iconic?
No, the what are we going to do now?
Oh, I thought you meant from The Graduate.
Yeah, from The Graduate.
we were looking at kind of having a graduate-esque ending that was kind of ironic and what do we do next for the generation. And at that point, when I first read the script, they had blown up the BMW to literally topple capitalism.
That was the finale.
That was the
First draft.
original finale in the first draft of the script. I don't know, Helen, correct me if I'm wrong.
No, it was like that. It was like that. I thought I was writing Reds. I was like, the capitalist love triangle screen, and you know.
But the deeper you kept going into the things that you went through and the things that all of us were going through at the time, it feels like almost like an embarrassing home movie a little bit for all of us, you know? She'd write these extraordinary scenes because she's such a natural writer, and her dialogue, I mean, there's a joke on every page. And their collaboration together was just magical. But she also put these things visually in the script that were always there, like the mini mart, and that were just magical moments that she always had there. So she had such a natural gift. It was really her craft catching up with the gift that she had already.
And Michael, I'm curious, having produced The Big Chill, which was a zeitgeist generation movie unto itself, what had you learned making that movie that you wanted to apply to this movie, but also refresh what you had accomplished there?
It was a time in cinema when voices about the generations that were coming, growing up, weren't really reflected in the theaters. It was very hard to get The Big Chill going. It took months for anyone to say yes. And I just had the same impulse here that we didn't have streaming. We had some sitcoms, nothing went as deep as this, and it seemed like a formula, and I don't mean that pejoratively, where you could be really authentic about what was going on in the culture, and nobody was doing it. And that was the excitement of the project. And to build on what Stacy said, I think she's right. The deeper you went with the feelings, the more successful it will be. So it seemed like there was an opportunity here to go younger from The Big Chill and do what was emotionally authentic to the people growing up then, in a way that nobody was doing. And when Stacy and I were partners, we had did a lot of really good stuff because we were always trying to be slightly ahead of what was in the commercial culture. And it just, an amazing cast. We were very fortunate to have Helen script, and then, Ben was coming off of the Ben Stiller show, and if you looked at Ben's work, it was incredibly well observed, and this movie lives on its observation. And Ben was never just...
By coming off the Ben Stiller show, you mean it was on for 12 weeks and got canceled? That was available. Yeah.
That's all I'd ever seen of your work.
Well, and on that note, Ben, you had not at this point directed a feature. You had done a couple episodes of television.
Yeah, Ben Stiller show.
The Ben Stiller show.
12 weeks.
The aforementioned Ben Stiller show. And
Yeah.
you'd done a short for SNL, and obviously you'd grown up in the business, but what appealed to you most about this project as your directorial debut, and at what point did you decide to also act? Because that's a very complicated endeavor.
Yeah, it was that Stacy and Michael came to me because I guess they'd seen some of those episodes, and Helen and I met, and they had been in this process for a couple of years, and we talked, and I was trying to figure out how to, I thought the script was great, but it wasn't my life, it was your life. And I was trying to figure out how to connect with it, and we started to talk about that, and improv together. I remember being in the offices, and us kind of just like improvising these scenes a little bit, and as that happened, then I think I was attached to direct it and not act in it, and then somehow somebody suggested, it might have been me, I should act in it also.
I think we did, Ben. We suggested you.
But the movie, so that's what happened, and then of course, though, it wasn't until Winona read it and said yes that we had a movie, because we needed.
No, it's Universal essentially gave you the stamp of approval when she said yes.
Well, who wouldn't?
Obviously.
Right? I mean, and I mean that was a huge part of that. And then the casting happened, and met Ethan, and I feel like watching it now, and I love to, as we talk about, like, it's just watching ourselves. I feel like everybody was cast so there's an essence of who each person is there that's very authentic.
For sure. And Winona, few women were as important to Hollywood as you were at this time in the early 90s. But you had and around this time you had played a lot of period characters, a lot of costumes, a lot of wigs, etc. And I was curious, how eager were you to play a more contemporary person, and maybe someone who, to some degree, you related to at this point in your career?
Well, I had come off of a couple of period
Corset movies,
things,
yes.
so I was excited about the comfortable clothes aspect of it. But I remembered, I read it, I thought it was great. I always sort of, because I started so young, I wondered maybe that would have been what I would have possibly done had I not gotten into acting. So I felt a connection, and I liked this sort of idea that was a really specific time, the early 90s. Like, I know a lot of people maybe who weren't around then it was a specific time, and there was like this sort of, if you came from the indie thing, and then, it happened with music too, and then you did something that, God forbid, did well, or, full ticket, then like, suddenly you were sort of...
This was also the year, Spanky the Monkey and Clerks was at Sundance. This was sort of like the height of that movement.
Yeah, but this, I thought it was really clever, and it touched on this sort of idea that we were sort of the like hangover generation from like the excessive 80s. Like the 80s, if you look back and you watch like the big blockbuster movies of the 80s, they're very excessive, and we had to deal with but we inherited like Helen wrote in the valedictorian speech, we inherited this thing that we didn't even really participate in, but I kind of just liked the irony of that, and I know that irony is
Which we all know the definition of irony after this movie.
Meta, but I thought I just connected with it, and I really, really wanted to work with Ben and Janine and Ethan. So I was like a huge fan of this show.
A lot of people were.
And very.
It's not, just to jump in there, that's not true. A lot of people.
I wasn't going to say that.
Yeah. Here's the thing. I'm not saying the show isn't brilliant, but until Winona made me watch it, and I had never heard of it. Nobody I met had ever heard of it. And Winona wanted me to be in this movie, and I'm like, who is Ben Stiller? It's like, you just work with Scorsese, and you're going to work with this clown? And I remember sitting there watching, I was like, yeah, it's pretty good, I guess.
I remember I called you, I was in Portugal, and I was playing like a Chilean political prisoner. And I remember when I called you, and were you doing a live or something? I don't know. But
We were working with Billy August. I was in the Canadian Rockies.
Yeah, and I had all this fake bruises and cuts, and I was like, kept seeing but I was like, Ethan, man, you gotta do this. I remember I really wanted, because you were so, I was very intimidated because these were cool people, and I felt a little bit like,
Winona brought us all together. She wasn't intimidated at all. She brought us.
No, because
you
Winona.
had your theater group, you guys were
Right.
cool. I was like that.
But I remember you called me, Winona, you said, well, Ethan, you should talk to Ethan. I'm like, who's this Ethan Hawke guy? he's like an Explorers? I mean, come on.
Well, you all got to know each other at the same time, it sounds like. So Janine, hello. Yes. Hi, Janine.
That's very nice of you, and validation from people I've not met defines me, so I appreciate it, but I don't want you to feel obligated to do it, but I do appreciate it. Thank you.
So in my research, I came across some anecdotes that said you were not the first or obvious choice for Vicky.
Yes, I get that a lot.
Okay.
I get that, or I used to in the 90s. Listen, the 90s were good. I didn't buy anything. I didn't buy anything. When things were going good, I had a hunch it was a fluke, and I was quite right. But I didn't buy anything.
And is
Lucy
it
Orman
also,
would be very pleased with me.
and is it also true that you were let go during production?
Yes, that
in
is
past? Okay. What were the circumstances behind that?
Well, apparently I was, as was my wont back then, was behaving in a rather immature manner on the set, and was not respecting the authority that needed to be established. And I didn't know I had been let go. I remember Ben saying, "You can go for the day," and I was like, psych, I didn't know that meant you can go for the day. And then back then there was answering machines, and there was message after message from David DiCamillo, good old David DiCamillo. "What did you do? What have you done?" And I was like, uh-oh, SpaghettiOs, I've done something. And my stomach felt sick, and then I called my agent, and he said, you have been let go. And then I was luckily reinstated, but I was let go from Tribeca as well, for the same reason. And then luckily brought back, because I think they didn't want to start over again. I'm grateful that I was brought back both times, and I have since become more mature, as I am in AARP now. ARP. Anybody? ARP? ARP. American Association of Retired Persons. Get a free backpack. Get a free backpack. And a weekend duffel, and a sporting toe. You just have to fill out the paperwork.
Like the Rosebud of the movie.
I was like a sled?
You were the you were the, I can't imagine the movie.
I think you're overestimating my appeal in that film, but I will take it. Thank you. Did I not answer that question?
You did. Thank you very much. And we're so glad you were reinstated, because as Winona said, it's impossible to imagine anyone else playing this part. So thank you. So one of the many things that I feel, and actually I rewatched it about 10 times in the last week or so, is the fashion, I'll put that in quotation marks, fashion, haircuts, and Ethan, the grease in your hair is, like, continuity-wise, what are we talking about? Are you all the Polaroids, are you making sure it's like just not washing for weeks? How is this accomplished?
That was my look, baby. It works. I don't know.
It's very low maintenance.
It was super low maintenance. It was called actually doing nothing. It was exactly the way I looked all the time back then. And in fact, I didn't really know I was doing anything until after the movie came out.
Just showed up.
Yeah, just showed up.
But they both had your hair too, Winona.
Her hair is like a character in the movie.
And that was a continuity thing a lot of the time, and we had to make sure
Like
that
a
you.
problem?
No, well, not a problem. It was a reality. Like, it was basically something that we had to deal with because it was part of. And I just want to maybe apologize for the way the film fetishizes smoking.
Just gonna say that. I was gonna
Can you believe I'm smoking in a hospital? No, there's like it's
out of control, the amount of close-ups of cigarettes and cigarettes going into mouths and coming out of things, and it's just, there's a lot of.
That is one of the things that has not aged particularly well, but that's okay.
I think
It didn't age particularly well when it came out. We had like a hate campaign.
Well, were you criticized at all?
Wait a second.
Smoking?
I'm wearing a patch at the end.
That's right.
That is a good point, yes.
I'm wearing a nicotine patch when I'm climbing all over here.
And your Gap uniform, because you got a job at the Gap. We had to cut that out.
That's right. So Ben, I wanted to talk to you upon my recent viewings, realizing that Emmanuel Lubezki was your DP, of course Chivo, who did Birdman and a bunch of incredible movies. To see that he was your DP is extraordinary, and also Rodrigo Garcia was your camera operator.
That's right.
I mean, both amazing artists. And I'm
Yeah.
wondering, what did you learn about filmmaking from working with those guys that you've taken with you?
To set every scene at dusk, which is what I noticed in the apartment. Somehow Chivo, that's his nickname, the goat, convinced me every scene should be at dusk. I'm like, some of those scenes look like it's like, are we in The Martian?
You have 9 minutes to film.
Yeah. No. Well, that one scene that you guys had in Houston, the you and me a little conversation. That scene was at what they call magic hour, and made these guys do that like very quickly over the course of like 20 minutes, and then I made them come in and have to loop the entire scene because there were waterfalls, so I apologize for that.
And did you do all the Houston scenes first and then you went back to LA, or how did you?
Yes, we did Houston first, I believe.
Houston last.
Houston last, of course. We did Houston last, is what we said. And we were only there for a little while, and then we were in LA for most of it.
But I have to say that the Houston element to me made it so distinct. And maybe having had Singles 2 years before where it was all Seattle and grunge, to see a movie like this set in a place where
Well, that's
it was
where-
super distinct, it was very meaningful. I thought that really worked.
I mean, not many people know this because they were so determined not to sell out in Houston in the 90s that no one ever heard of a lot of people there. But there was a big music scene there, and there were bands who were like playing for T-shirts and Pop-Tarts, and yeah, they never really made it out of Houston because Seattle was the sellout kind of a thing, and that's what I was drawing from, and Ben went down there with me, and we
Did like a scouting trip together, right? At some point?
Yeah.
Yeah, we saw the locations, and
We did the Last Concert Cafe.
oh, right, that's right.
Yeah, that was kind of big.
The film commission paid for it because that was before Winona had come on board, and we didn't know if we were going to have any money, and the three of us went.
welcome.
And it was bittersweet. Thank you. We were in the car together in Houston when we got the call that you said yes, and we knew we were actually making the movie.
Oh, that's great. So speaking of music, I'd be remiss if we did not talk about the amazing soundtrack. And per our guest earlier tonight, Lisa Loeb, who is the centerpiece of this incredible soundtrack. Stacey and Michael, please tell me a little bit about the evolution. Obviously, this started with Ethan and Lisa knew each other, and somehow Lisa's music was presented to the production. So tell me how it grew from there. And what strikes me about this soundtrack is how female forward it is. And going back to Singles, of course, because it was sort of like the one 2 years before, which was very male. I think there's like one female voice on that entire soundtrack. And this felt it felt like Lelena, it felt like her story. So tell me a little bit about your vision for the soundtrack and how you selected all these incredible songs, because there's really a lot to choose from, I imagine.
Who's that
Oh,
too?
for Stacey and Michael.
They weren't listening.
We heard every word. Actually, I just told these guys the story. We were screening the movie for Ethan for the first time in New York, and Ben always knew that he wanted to use the U2 song "All I Want Is You" in the soundtrack. A bunch of things Helen had written into the script, so those were just clearances. But Evan Dando from the Lemonheads is at the end of the film in the parody version of Lelena and Michael, and we want a Lemonhead song for the end of the movie. And one thing that's interesting is Michael had to fly up to beg the Gap to let us use the Gap actually in the movie. And all of these bands, we were begging to be in the film, and now they just would either pay us or throw their songs at us, and the Gap would probably give us money. But it was a very different time. So Atlantic Records said there's no way that you can use the Lemonheads. They cannot be in a movie. They're too special to be in a movie. And it was the 90s. None of us wanted to sell out. And so we were about to fly to Ireland to go show Bono the movie, and we were going to have to carry the cans of film to Ireland. And we got a call in the middle of the screening that Bono had said yes because he knows Winona. And again, our guardian angel. And so we weren't going to Ireland. And Ethan said, my theater company's having a benefit tonight, and my friend Lisa Loeb's playing. Come see her play. And when the Lemonheads were out, we were like, we have to use Lisa Loeb for the second end title. And we said,
Juliana Hatfield, who was in the Lemonheads.
Exactly. And Ben directed Juliana's video, and then we said Ethan has to direct Lisa's video, and it's going to all be in one take. And it was perfect.
And there was also a cassette that Ethan had that had Lisa.
Yeah, it's funny. You know one thing about 25, sorry to jump in, but that's totally not true, everything you just said. But you're blurring two memories together into one memory, but that's okay. It all
went out a lot, too.
It's all true, it just, the timeline is different. There was a...
Yeah, tell them. We started shooting in Houston. No.
It doesn't.
You sent a cassette with "Stay" on it.
Exactly. I don't want want to contradict Stacy, but the truth is that I had sent you. I heard the song. Lisa was in my theater company, and was a great friend and somebody I cared about a lot. And after we'd shot the film, I heard her play this song, and I'd spoken to Ben about the cut of the movies. Something happened, but I asked her, that song is so perfect for Reality Bites. Go home, and she went and recorded on a 4-track, and I sent the cassette to you. And then the benefit was, the theater company didn't have a benefit until after Reality Bites came out, maybe. So, I mean, so those things, right. We made so much. Lisa playing Irving Plaza was what launched the theater company to a new level. So, that.
Right. And also on that cassette, there were some other songs too. Remember Frank Whaley's band, right?
Yeah, a bunch of different songs.
But what I remember about the Stay, first of all, Stacey and Michael really did have so much to do with creating the soundtrack album, which now, like, the soundtrack album entity, or the idea of a soundtrack album doesn't even exist really anymore. But Stay was a negotiation, I remember, with the soundtrack company, because nobody knew who Lisa was. They didn't know it was going to be a huge hit.
She's the first unsigned. I don't know if I'm the first unsigned rock and roll artist to ever go to #1. So that was pretty cool.
And that record lasted until about 5 years ago when people were unsigned and putting their stuff on the internet. I think that the Poppin' Tag song is what was the second.
But I remember negotiating.
Only one.
I remember you took us over to the office of the record company guy, and we had to negotiate what would get on the album or not, and it came down to, if you want to keep Stay on the album, then you can't have the Peter Frampton song, Baby I Love Your Way, unless you let Big Mountain, this reggae band, cover it.
No, you mean that was a devil's bargain.
No,
I had to say. Come on, that
I
it
agree
needed
with
to have been remade.
No,
And
Ben said it's
the
a
reggae
no.
version, I would have to say that you. I think
It's not in the movie.
that was a bad bargain. The Stay is fantastic. What did you lose that you wanted that Big Mountain was?
I just wanted to have the actual Peter Frampton song.
Yes,
They said have Big Mountain cover it, and then it became like a big hit anyway.
It's still
Scarily, it went to #1, and we were like, it cannot be in the movie. Yeah, they wouldn't let us put it on the
That Big
soundtrack.
Mountain one, there was just no reason to make it a reggae.
All right, we have to move on from this conversation.
Thank you.
But I love all of you. Okay. So you premiered the movie at Sundance, '94, and then you opened it a month later. And what do you remember about the way the movie was received in Hollywood? I know it ended up doing fairly well, $30 million back then, nothing to sneeze at. But how was it received, and how, for the actors, was this something that you thought, oh, this is kind of changing my career trajectory, people are going to sort of see me differently now? So what was and anyone can feel free to answer.
Well, I could just say, leading up to the movie coming out, it was a strange sort of neither fish nor fowl type of situation with the movie, because it wasn't an independent movie like Clerks or Spanking the Monkey or Slackers. It was made by Universal Studios. So from the beginning, people were suspect. And
what is this studio movie doing at Sundance?
So like we went to do a test screening, I believe, in Berkeley, California, right? And the Universal logo comes up on the screen and the audience starts booing.
No, tell them.
Oh, we went to Berkeley because we thought that would be our crowd, right? We thought they're gonna get us.
You guys are the only people who have I've been in a theater with that laughed at the bell jar joke, and that's why we went to Berkeley, because our first screening, which was a really good screening in Palm Springs, nobody got the joke, and it was crickets, and we were like, these are not our people.
Defense of the Bay Area. They're good up there. I'm from there.
But they hissed and booed when they.
But just
At the logo, because they thought, we don't want to hear from the man about, being cool.
And they liked it.
But ultimately they liked it, I assume.
Well, yeah, I think it was okay. Not a great screening, no. But,
The focus group, somebody said to Ben that he violated the laws of decoupage editing.
Right.
That's a very specific note, isn't it? Yeah.
I learned French from that conversation.
So Helen, I wanted to talk to you a little bit again, because you're my hero. So I'm trying to imagine someone your age having a studio movie come out. I can't imagine how that felt. You were the Lena Dunham of '94, the voice of your generation, for better or worse. I know we cringe kind of hearing that, but there was no one else writing this kind of content, especially a young woman. So how did your career change? Because there is a long gap in your resume between that movie and later projects.
Spiral here. Okay.
No, but I just the mechanics of, because I feel like nowadays you probably get a Netflix deal. You just get scooped up to write other movies. So
Yeah,
tell me what happened.
I think that being a woman back then was, not a secret. It was this like handicap, and I think that I also think that I do regret that I was 23 when it got made. 24. I wish I had been 30. I think I would have appreciated it more. I sort of felt like, oh, I guess this is what happens when you write a movie. You get a call from Winona, and then Ethan, and of course you pair with someone like Ben, and you have these great producers. Everything just works out. And no, that's not at all the way it works. I will say, I've worked every single quarter for 29 years, so it's not like I haven't worked. It's sort of like I just, as a screenwriter, I can't control the process of what happens to what I write after it leaves. But I think that I know that I've heard from people that it was inspirational for them to see a young woman sort of get, soul credit, and to everyone's.
And an original script too, which is very rare.
My God, there's no IP. That's the difference. That I don't think the movie would get made today in this venue. Certainly not a studio film. And I would have to say thank you to like Ben and Stacy and Michael for not letting me be rewritten. Too, it's for better or worse. In a way, like some people, this whole thing of like, was it a good movie? Was it a bad movie? It's like I don't like to think of movies in those terms. I think of, was it an authentic movie? Did it have something to say? And I feel like for better or worse, because I know not everyone loves this movie, it was authentic. It really was a 23-year-old and a 21-year-old, 22-year-old. You were 20.
43.
You look great, by the way, Ben. You have 25 years has been very good to you.
Everyone was at peak pulchritude.
What?
I was actually 29 though. I was 29.
Yes.
I was the oldest, I think, of everybody. So I was actually a tail end of the baby boomers, not
That's
a
right.
Gen X. I just want to make that clear.
Well, I was curious. Was PG?
One thing I'd like to say about it, though, it really was remarkable. I want to say before this moment ends, how much we all are indebted to Winona using her strength and her power at that moment to caring about another woman's voice. To really caring and giving elements what happened to me, I'm indebted. Winona believed in me. Winona got me this job. This job changed the trajectory of my career entirely. And so I'm very grateful to that, obviously. But one of the things that I love about the writing of it is that it is this dual love story, and both the men are incredibly flawed. And it's so rare that you really see three-dimensional human beings where somebody actually can do the wrong thing, and the movie can kind of forgive them. Because in life, we do the wrong thing all the time. And it's so difficult for us to forgive ourselves, because in a movie, when somebody does something bad, they're out. And in the movie, you didn't do that with these characters. Both Ben and us, we behave badly, and we're trying to learn. And the movie ends up feeling about how hard it is as young people to learn your way. You have to live your way through these things. And I'm just very grateful to you, Winona, and to be a part of this whole thing.
That Winona was so empowered, and she empowered another woman. Means a lot to me.
Amazing.
Thank you. Literally, that changed the trajectory of my career, and none of it would have happened if Winona had said, I want to do this movie. It just wouldn't have happened. And
So no Zoolander if Winona had.
no, yeah. Well, and my big follow-up was Cable Guy, so it wasn't all
Which is a great film.
I learned my Hollywood lessons.
I love that.
But I also want to say that, when I read it, I always read it just as this great little story about these friends. I didn't I never anticipated it becoming this sort of, and I don't even like to say the generation certain letter, because I feel like I don't, but I never really saw it
applied the generation thing to it after the fact, and maybe at the time it felt
It's an emergent
it was,
property.
To me, it was a romantic comedy. I didn't really think like, wow, my generation's being captured. That came
Yeah,
later.
but I heard a lot of that, and I think perhaps that was because I was at the time dating a musician, and if people think Hollywood is bad, wait till you get into like the precious little indie music scene where like, you know, it's like way rougher, man. But you're constant. Oh, you're in a maybe. You know, but I have to say that I feel like it really, the authenticity that you're talking about really comes through, and every person that I've run into has, in retrospect, like, loves the movie. I do think there was a moment, because maybe it was Universal, or I don't know, but I feel like I came on to this. I feel like the lucky one, and I feel like it couldn't have been made with, you know, I mean, every ingredient up here, and I am so grateful, and I'm really grateful to you, Helen, and to Ben. I was so nervous meeting you. Remember, it was at it was the one that closed down.
All the good ones are closed.
Oh yeah.
Something. I remember how nervous I was, because I just, you know, it was.
I mean, I was much more nervous than you.
I was more nervous than both of you.
No, but honestly, though, you were genuinely like, I think for somebody in that position, you know, young person, you were so open and welcoming to wanting to collaborate and not be the star and not make it like, because you had all this power to make the movie, which was.
I wasn't aware of that, though.
Well, it never felt like you were aware of it, because you just were like, I love this, and I want to just empower all of you to do the best you can and to have a good experience, and I want to be a part of the experience, and that was, you know, that was so important.
So
I do think if we hadn't have opened against Blue Chips with Shaquille O'Neal and McNulty, we would have done much better that week.
So I have a very important final question.
Wait, one funny story.
Okay,
One
fine.
question.
Make
One
it
funny story
quick.
about Sundance. I really wanted to tell. One funny story is, I remember you said, what was it like at Sundance? My memory of Sundance was being in the ski lift with Steve Zahn, smoking a bowl, and saying to him, I said, wow, this is really, I mean, don't you feel like this is a big deal, huh? And Steve's like, what do you mean? I mean, like, the movie, it's like, it's really like, there's, I mean, it's a lot. What do you mean? Like, I feel really, what? I'm like, never mind.
And at high altitude, too. So I have a very important final question, and I can't believe we have to wrap. We only have less than 8 minutes. So, where are these characters today? They would be 48 years old.
I wish.
Vicky is only 48. As far as we know, they're all 23 when the movie started, and
I think
Michael's
Michael's like
older.
26.
Michael is a little bit older. But where is Lelena today? Where is Troy? Where is Vicky? And where is Sammy? Where do we think they are?
Actually, I kind of like got off of the point I was trying to make before, but my point was that people always come up and like, oh, would you be with Troy or will you be with Michael? Like, I'm team Troy, I'm team, and I, you know, it's like a fight, but I always thought maybe I'd
Can I just say, people often, I've said this before, mistake. What? People mistake me for being both gay and Jewish, which I am neither, but I am complimented by that. It makes me seem far more interesting than an asexual atheist. It gives me more texture. Can I also just say one thing about the generation thing, where I think there was a pushback back then, which I tend to agree with. This speaks to the authenticity. This is Helen's story. When people, it doesn't represent, quote unquote, a generation. It represents those people who we would say would be between working class, middle class, white, who had the luxury of having those day jobs and things like that. So I feel like it's wrong. I understand why there was some pushback by that, because that is a blanket statement, a generation. A generation is very, very diverse, many, many other stories to tell. And it was Helen was speaking her truth. And I felt like that was an unfair pressure to put on the movie, if that makes sense.
Very smart. Okay, we're almost done, but I have to ask this question because I've been dreaming of asking you. Would you ever do a sequel?
I think I always say.
I think they'd allow it. We're all too old. We would have to play our parent. I mean, we'd have to be the
Be
parent.
like Benjamin Buttons.
Helen, would you ever do a sequel?
I would say it was.
I have arthritis.
I feel like I'm kind of like
I have osteoporosis.
so.
You feel like you've written the sequel?
I feel like I'm living the sequel.
You're living the sequel, okay.
I mean, you know, those relationships were. I mean, they were real. I mean, that's it's based on my husband and I who now have been married longer than Vicky's parents in the movie, which shocked me. And I mean, I think that I would love to do a spiritual sequel at least, and freeze frame like.
But would it be perpetually set in 1990?
No. No, this is the characters today.
We went to a TV show Ben and I did, and set it in the 90s, but it was two 90s, so they did like
Groundhog.
it was.
And Helen, is it true, and this is something that blew my mind, and please again confirm, that when you say reality bites, you don't mean reality sucks, you meant sound bites from reality.
I wrote it during the election. It was like everyone was a rush.
I misinterpreted that title for 25 years until I recently discovered
It doesn't
this.
matter what I intended, it matters what you guys take.
It really came up, that changes the tenor of the movie for me. It makes it not...
Well, it's like little bites of really little, instead of sound bites, like little bites of reality. It's almost like the witnesses in, not sure for Reds again, but the witnesses in Reds, those what I would imagine.
Reds was very, important to you as a
But,
movie.
it had
Great movie.
It's a great movie.
Well, very cynic, and you
That
had
was
the
Elaine
impassioned
May's idea.
and then you had Louise Bryan.
Okay, before we go, I don't want to cut you off. We have 4 minutes. I would love for each of you to share favorite moment from set or during production that has stuck with you. When you think about making this movie and the experience of working together, what is the first thought that comes into your mind? Don't get that long to think about it.
I mean, it's hard to choose because it was a lot. It was a really significant, really great time in my sort of life, and I have so many good memories. I'm trying to think of.
Michael, do you have one? It looks like you have one.
Yeah, I remember seeing Ben's first cut and going, this movie's going to work. And I'm sorry, what's the time frame of the question here?
It can be, of course, it can be from any time.
No, my fondest of many memories is I remember Ben showing us the rough cut and going, oh my God, this movie really works. And if you've ever seen a rough cut, you know how annoying it can be. So I just remember the fullness and the excitement of going, we made a good movie. And you can only go, you've made a good movie. If it's a success, that's up to the movie gods. But at least you walk away going, hey, this movie's good.
It's a rare experience. Yeah.
I can remember something that was devastating. I had the idea to cut the bangs like that, and I regret that. I had Betty Page, but the thing is you can't have a giant head and face. And then I can remember I had the bangs and I didn't clear it. I told the hair person it was okay. See, this is the type of thing that gets you fired. And then I can remember Ben saying, one of the first things, is there any way to undo that? As if you can add. It was straight, but they were Betty Page. I said Betty Page bangs, which are like that, and oh boy, that was
totally wrong.
Bonehead move on my
They were
part.
great.
No. It was. I wish I hadn't done it because the concept of the Betty Page thing. It's a nice theory. I don't think it worked out particularly well for me.
I remember one for me. Can I go next?
You certainly can.
One time, I don't know if it happened in rehearsal or how it happened, but in one of your little films, Ben had asked me to kind of improvise something, and I improvised some lines from a poem, a Gregory Corso poem. Should I get married? Should I be good? Astound the girl next door with my velvet suit, my Faustus hood. And Ben put it into the movie. It's cool. And I remember, I'm sure I misremember things too, but I remember seeing the rough cut and saying to Ben, like, oh wait, I didn't make that up. That's poem. Like, we have to get the rights to that.
And I was like, I knew that.
Guess what? Guess what? Gregory Corso's son was my first boyfriend when I was like 5 years old.
All right, so a couple years after the movie came out, I'm in New York City, and Gregory Corso's doing the poetry reading, and he leaps up and he hugs me, and he introduces me in front of a group of people, saying, "This is an angel," because he'd been getting, residual checks. And they'd say, he was dying, and they paid for all his bills. And this movie, saved a beat poet's last few years of his life.
That's the good story, because we got sued by 2 other people. The real Troy Dyer sued, so that's a story for another day. But yeah.
I would say, for me, a couple things. One thing is having been able to edit the movie on film, because it was right when film editing was going away, so I had the opportunity to work with Lisa Churgan, our editor, and actually cut it on a flatbed. And that process, I just feel really lucky that I had that process on this movie. I'd say the other thing is watching it. One of my favorite experiences associated with the movie would be watching the movie today with this audience here, and having the opportunity to share this with you guys. Seriously. I really mean that, because this is one of those things that we're all having this one experience here. It's not on television. No one else is going to experience it. We're having it. It's very, as I said earlier, it's emotional for me to be here, to hear the movie with an audience, to hear your reactions, to feel it together, and to still be here 25 years later. I'm very grateful for that.
Thank you.
Although I think that's not true, that no one else will experience it. This is modern culture. Nothing goes undocumented. It's worse than a Stasi. There's no way that, like right there, which is fine. I'm not criticizing you. I'm just saying. It's just that there is no, you know what I mean? Like, everything is documented except ghosts.
I know, but they're not like really in the room,
Well, ghosts are undocumented. There's no evidence.
I think the movie captures the last moment in time before you were reachable 24/7.
Yes.
So,
Right.
I remember there was no internet, so you couldn't even look people up.
It's hard to imagine that time.
Clear, and I somehow tracked down her phone number. It was a different time.
They had a phone book, you guys. They had a thing called the phone book. And you would say, Smith,
And I think
go ahead to the Essex. Smith, there'd be a whole lot of them.
Okay,
I'd made a lot of phone calls.
we are already going over, but I want to give Helen the last word.
God, oh shit. I would say that to echo what Ben said, watching the movie with my 17-year-old daughter in the audience, like why didn't she pick Ben? And she's also like, what does this mean, selling out? What is that?
So sweet. Well, it pains me to say goodbye, but we are so grateful to all of you for being here today.